Could social media and technology make us feel more alone? In modern day technology and social media plays a big role in our daily lives. We wanted to conduct an experiment that is actually relevant to us, so we chose a topic if social media can make us more alone. We wanted to find the impact social media has by surveying two groups of people, one group being the ages 11 to 15, middle schoolers, and the other 19 to 30, adults. We did this to not only get a wider variety of responses, but to also see if there's an obvious difference between the two age groups. Samuel Merritt University study. 2% of smartphone owners reported checking their mobile devices a few times an hour or more. Data confirms that young people are even more wired. More than 7 in 10 young smartphone users check their device a few times an hour or more often. 22% admit to looking at it every few minutes. We are engineered in such a way that as long as an experience hits the right buttons, our brains will release the neurotransmitter dopamine. We'll get a flood of dopamine that makes us feel wonderful in the short term, though in the long term you build a tolerance and want more. We will be asking many different people of many different ages, varying from middle school students to parents. We will also be asking both boys and girls. We are doing so in order to determine the impact that age makes and find out if all people agree that social media makes us feel more alone. We will also try to have a similar amount of each age and gender to make our data more accurate. We are collecting our data in a few different ways. Brendan and Jay both have siblings in middle school, and we will be surveying a large amount of their classmates. Lastly, we will all reach out to adults we know, such as coaches, teachers, and older siblings. We will mostly use bar graphs because they efficiently portray the results and the differences between ages. We will also use a scatter plot to show that a majority of the people agreed with our prompt, and we will use histograms to show that the results between both age groups are similar and have the same majority vote. This is our pie chart data for our age results. For middle school students, we tested ages 11 through 15. 12.7% were ages 15 to 16. 28.2% were ages 13 to 14. And 59.2% were ages 11 to 12. For adults, we tested ages 19 to 30. 18.2% were ages 27 to 30. 33% were ages 23 to 26. And 48.9% were ages 19 to 22.
These two pie charts show our count for each gender in both middle schoolers and for adults. And in both pie charts, we surveyed more girls than boys, about 55%, and then of girls, and then for boys, 45%. These are some results for the overall average of middle schoolers. These are some questions. The first question is, how many hours do you spend on your phone a day? The average is about 3.3. And then on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you feel like social media makes you feel more alone? 10 being the most alone. The average was 6.0. And then what percentage of the time you spend on your phone is because you're bored? And they said about 75% at the time. And then what percentage of the time you spend on your phone is for communication purposes? The average is about 24% of the time they go on their phone to talk to other people via phone. And then on a scale of 1 to 10, how often do you go on your phone when you're with people? And they said about 5.7, which is about half the time. And then these are the results for the overall average of adults. How many hours you spend on your phone a day? It's about 2 hours. And on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you feel like social media makes you feel more alone? They're about a 6.6. And what percentage of the time you spend on your phone because you're bored? And they said a whopping 62%. And what percentage of the time you spend on your phone is for communication purposes? And they said 39%, which is 10% more than the middle schoolers. And on a scale of 1 to 10, how often do you go on your phone when you're with people? And they said about a 6.6. These are some results from our middle schoolers versus adults for their daily hours on their phone. And in the adult pie chart, the red represents about 2 hours, the blue represents about an hour, the yellow represents about 3 hours, and the green represents about 4 hours. For adults, they are on their phone for 2 hours, about 47.1%. of the adult population that we surveyed. 27.5% are on their phone about an hour. 15.7% are on their phone 3 hours. And then 9.8% are on their phone for 4 hours. And then for middle schoolers, the red represents 3 to 4 hours, the blue represents 1 to 2 hours, and the yellow represents 5 to 6. For the 3 to 4 hours, 49% of the middle schoolers are on their phone. And then 29.4% they are on their phone for 1 to 2 hours. And then for 21.6%, they're on their phone 5 to 6 hours. So this is an explanation of the daily hours on phones for both middle schoolers and adults. And in the adult pie chart, it is shown that most adults, 47.1%, are on their phones about 2 hours a day. And then in the middle school pie chart, it is shown that most kids, 49%, are on their phones 4 hours a day. There's a drastic difference between adult usage and middle school usage of technology a day, and it clearly portrays that the younger ages spend more time on their phones. We believe this could be because of our many social media accounts, and it is a social norm for younger generation to go on their phones many hours throughout the day.
These two pie charts are showing the results we found when asking the kids and adults, does technology and social media make you feel more alone? And we asked this from a 1 to 10 scale, 10 being most alone and 1 being least alone. Each color represents a different category. So for example, green is the percentage of people who chose 8 to 9 out of the 1 to 10 scale, and then yellow would be 6 to 7, red 4 to 5, and blue 2 to 3. So the middle school pie chart shows us that 33.3%, which is the highest percentage, gave the rating of 8 and 9 when being asked if they feel more alone with social media. The adult pie chart shows us that 31.4% of the adults chose 8 and 9. There's only a 1.9% difference, but we found that the majority of both age groups strongly believe that social media and technology makes us feel more alone. We also want to see in both groups how much people use their phone just out of boredom. So 75% of the kids said that they were using their phones out of boredom, and 62% of the adults said they were using their phone out of boredom as well. In the scatter plot, our data shows that both teens and adults are mainly on their phone out of boredom. In our bar graph, though, the upward trend line shows that as a result of using social media and technology, adults and teens feel more alone. These are the two graphs for when we were asking if people use their phone for communication purposes. Each color represents also a different category. So for middle schoolers, the blue represents 10 to 20% of people who said they use it for communication purposes. Red is 30 to 40% who said that they use it for communication purposes, and yellow is 50 to 60. In the adults, the red represents 50 to 60% though for communication purposes, and the blue represents 20 to 30%, and the yellow represents 70 to 80.
Our explanation for communication results is that in the middle school pie chart, you can tell that most kids don't go on their phones for communication purposes as much as adults do. Adults, on the other hand, are on their phones for communication purposes 60% of the time. This is unlike middle schoolers who are on their phones only 40% of the time for communication purposes. Our last question was, on a scale of 1 to 10, how often do you go on your phone around people? This is a pie chart for the middle school results. 35.3% answered 6 through 7. 23.5% answered 8 through 9. 23.5% answered 4 through 5. And only 17.6% answered 2 or 3. For the adults, 39.2% answered 1 to 2. 27.5% answered 3 to 4. 19.6% answered 5 through 6. And 13.7% answered 7 through 8. Our explanation is that the middle school pie chart shows that kids go on their phones around people about 10% more than adults do when they are around people. This is an important aspect of our project because it shows the negative impact technology can have on our social skills. In each category, there is a drastic difference between kids and adults, also proving that kids go on their phones more around other people. In conclusion, both adults and middle schoolers agreed that social media makes us feel more alone. Although, this trend seems to be much more significant with middle schoolers compared to adults. We believe that this is because they have grown up surrounded and influenced by technology. Even though middle schoolers spend more time on their phone than adults, it is likely that adults are still aware of its negative effects by experiencing them firsthand and also witnessing it in the younger generation. Overall, we can conclude that despite both age groups agreeing with the statement that social media makes us feel more alone, it has a stronger impact on the younger generation. The younger generation is introduced to technology at a very young age. It has a negative impact on their social skills, and this is an issue that could potentially get worse as technology grows. The problems that we found in our project is that a lot of our data was close together, so it was hard to find things to compare. If we did the project again, we would have changed the data from 1 hour to 1.5 hours to spread out our data points so they aren't so clumped together. We recommend to future students who work on this project to not procrastinate because when you get stuff done early, you can work on your presentation a lot longer and go over it with more detail. Thank you for listening.